Biggest thing I'd like to say of how biodiversity is that is the biggest concern when it comes to GMOs, and not the actual chemical effects on the human anatomy.
The surrounding impacts are unknown and untested. They're just that's the concern, is that we're not aware of the impacts.
Correct. The question at hand is too complex.
Yeah.
And we don't have the means to answer those questions. We don't know what every bug is doing. We don't know what every bird is doing.
Right. Yeah, but that same problem arises when we attempt to do anything. But GMOs is just something we're doing on a large scale.
We can do work to reduce risk and to have some predictability, but when it comes to complex issues, it comes down to having the right people being able to have the conversations. Because when you have multiple systems, with multiple people that require specialization to even understand what's going on, typically the conversation going back and forth is too difficult to have.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Because it almost seems necessary to have that many cooks in the kitchen, but the problem is that they have different jargon. They have different terminology, and that makes communication difficult, and it slows the process.
Do you think that's our main problem with... Because I would say that there's work being done to assess risk right now. Just I guess I'm under the impression that there's not enough. Do you think the multidisciplinary piece being the problem, do you think that's the main problem, is the communication between those?
Oh, I just it's something to note, but I do think that the impact is potentially detrimental, because we've seen impacts of systems. We've seen how the unpredictability of it scares us. We don't know where it's going to hit.
I mean, I think bees is what we need to be worried about.
I don't know if there's really much more to say about biodiversity other than it's a really complex issue. And to really draw that out is to really explain why biodiversity would require to explain what complexity is,
Yeah, I mean, just basic level, we all probably understand that biodiversity, the larger pool of species, and I guess the larger pool of diversity in DNA specifically, is what allows the planet to operate in more complex of ways, and that the planet operating in such a complex way is kind of what provides the stability.
Yeah, correct. Because if we were all one thing, we're much more susceptible to disease. Right,
and so from that, I find peace among the chaos. The chaos has brought a balance almost. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, is chaos the right word? But it's just the fact that everything, so much is going on, it's bringing balance and resilience to the balance being interrupted.
There are states of equilibrium that exist for stabilized periods, but they're never enduring, and they're never always lasting. Things are always either, there are valleys and peaks that prevent things from changing,
The longer the time an environment remains the same, layers upon layers of, as niches become being able to be used, as more of the resources are being able to use more efficiently, and food chain develops, layers and layers of resilience get added to the balance of the stability of the current situation.
It increases the state of equilibrium over time. But the thing is when you alter that drastically in one way, it shifts from one thing to another thing. And so you can set up these models, and you can understand what shifts will make what, but to understand what decisions you make will lead to those shifts is the difficult part, because it's a complex system that you're interacting with, because there are just many complicated things, and the nature of the issue at hand makes it complex.
Yeah, I agree.
Vicktor-san,
What the?
what do you have any
I don't know. I feel kind of lost here. I feel like I don't have a whole lot.
what does it sound like we're talking about?
Just general biodiversity, which I will also agree that's a good thing. Like, to say what you said again, if everyone had a very same gene pattern, or we were all essentially quote unquote the same, one single disease could come through and wreck everything.
Right. And just take that idea and scale it all to like all species.
Yeah, and then I think going off what Joe said, like just any population that sustains itself for long enough will become biodiverse just because of the environment around them. They'll essentially split themselves. The example being like ants. You get an ant colony that gets so big, they eventually, a group splinters off and they go become their own thing.
Right. And so, like, imagine 1,000 people just getting dropped on an island on a different planet, right? So, but for some reason they can live, right? And there's like one obvious food source. And so, obviously, people in that situation learn how to like work with that food source very well. But once like that kind of domain has been refined so much, it's now sometimes can become less amount of work to generate a high value if you instead learn how to refine how we handle like a different resource that might be not as common, but that kind of comes after they've like learned to do this other resource really well. And the more time you allow, the smaller pockets of the variability will be able to be like extracted for their value.
It's like determining if it's worth even taking on when you have this much easier, streamlined, like, resource available.
Right.
Like, why would we bother to learn how to process grain when we're eating watermelons?
Yeah, but 500 people are already preparing watermelons, and there's not really, and we've gotten good at it, so there's just like, you have additional value to give society, like, in the form of like, I can complete some tasks for the betterment of everyone, but there's not much value I can bring in being a watermelon preparer, because like all of them already do that. Oh, but I can go and like grow some carrots over here. There's only 3 farmers doing that. I can go and add my value there, and over time we get good at doing carrots too, and then people move on to other things, and we get good at doing that too, and that's what's creating the resilience and the resilience of the current state of things. Is more of the niches that are being like exploited. Not exploited, but like utilized.
The more and more niches that we have available to exploit, the better.
Right. So like, say in a pond, there's like there's several different food sources for frogs, and there's over time a bunch of different species of frogs have developed to take advantage of like that certain different resources that what drew the frogs there in the first place. And so now you have all these frogs living off of different things, and so if a frog goes like, if one resource is no longer available, maybe the primary resource that drew the frogs there is no longer available, so in that frog disappears, and that will have impacts on the food chain, right? But so because there's other frogs, the animals that eat the frogs aren't going to be as impacted on that one frog going on into extinction. And the balance in the ecosystem will like remain, because they've built that resilience on exploiting the other potential avenues that frogs could exist. So when one frog went out, it didn't just take everything out of balance.
It allows what's the resilience to a system whenever there has been like a blow to it, right. Whenever there is
something that would cause a like runaway effect, right?
Correct.
So if all the frogs went away, then like everything that ate the frog would go away, and that would affect would have increased, like it'll just be a runaway effect that would compound and then cause like a drastic change in the state of things in that environment.
So now, like, just kind of going back full circle, the idea is here's the big scary thought when it comes to GMOs. We don't know what it's going to be like introducing this new strain of DNA into the competition amongst other plants. Like, we don't know what it's going to be like to have these super plants that can survive super bugs when all these other wild plants can't.
Mm-hmm.
And we just don't know what that will do to the world. Like, what happens when all the other plants in the world start becoming super plants? I mean, all the other bugs are going to become super bugs, but it may not happen at a proportional rate. Maybe some bugs die faster than other bugs, and some birds die. You know what I mean? It's going to be shifts in ecosystems at a complex rate. You know, it's undeterminable because we don't have cameras on all the bugs, on all the springtails and all the, robins and all the, sparrows. Like, it's the nature of the question is complex.